Hello and welcome to another episode of New Game Plus. I'm Jason. I'm joined by Megs. No Donald today. We've booted him out.
He's busy with E3, recovering from E3.
E3 and D&D and everything that has that same rhyming syllable.
Yeah.
I don't know. But what we figured we would do, E3's been happening. It's been huge. But we figured what we'd do is, in the gap, we'd talk about some of the great games you may have missed. So we've decided to do a Switch episode, Nintendo Switch episode, basically focusing on those titles that you may have missed over the past 6 months, which is a reasonable thing because there's been a lot of good games.
I don't know about you, but I scroll the Nintendo eShop all the time and there's new additions regularly. It's really exciting to see that the fact that they're opening the doors for smaller devs to really put on their successful indie titles all year round.
And it makes sense too, because these are the kind of titles that don't require this top-end hardware, or at least
exactly. You don't need to sell it at a retail or anything like that. It saves costs and people can get their hands on it straight away without leaving their couch.
Plus you can play it in your hands. And again, that's still the advantage. I know we talk about it all the time, but that is still the advantage of the Switch. You can just play it in your lap. So,
love it. But get this though, we have Earthlock, the Framed Collection, which I review, which I'm super excited about, and you should be too. Banner Saga and Yonder as well.
So plenty of great games there. We'll also do a bit of an E3 wrap of the Nintendo E3 conference, which as we film this, we don't know about. We hope
I mean, you haven't slept.
Should be good.
I've had a little sleep, and it's like Christmas to me.
Yeah,
I'm super excited about it. So we're definitely doing a recap.
Your stamina is pretty impressive. Like, you're going to work and living a normal life. I'm just sitting at home going, yeah, I'm fine. So, but for starters, we should go off to our first review, which is Earthlock.
Enjoy.
It goes without saying that Japanese RPGs have become not only like a meme, but a genre unto themselves. Whether you're an actual Japanese developer or just inspired by, they have their own unique tells. A young fella wakes up in the middle of the night to his village being killed and becomes the savior of the universe. He's the oldest Japanese RPG trope. Other developers have taken that and gone, let's make our twist on that classic turn-based battling RPG style. And that's where we get games like Earthlock. So I've got Shaney in to discuss Earthlock, which is, I mean, it's a bit different. I don't think it's made by the Japanese. I'm pretty sure it's made by the Europeans.
Yeah, so it's not a Japanese RPG.
It's a European-Japanese RPG.
Let's just say RPG. Let's throw away the letter, because let's not even start on that conversation, because that's a whole different conversation. Yeah. It's an RPG, so it's a very stock standard kind of style where you've got your, 4 heroes or whatever standing in a line. You've got your turn-based action where you can where you're choosing your what move to do or heal but there's a few elements in there that they throw in to toss it up a little bit.
And I guess that is a lot of the things with a lot of these games. Even the Japanese have moved away from that, where a lot of their turn-based systems now. I mean, Final Fantasy 15 is technically a turn-based system. Technically.
Okay, no.
You know what I mean?
No.
But like, the Tales games have done it for a while where you've had running around, you just set people with different things. So it's interesting they've gone back to that more traditional early Final Fantasy style game, but then they've added their own unique twist on it.
Yeah, they've got a few new mechanics, like, new maybe not the right word, but reused mechanics, I should say. So you've got a bond system, which, you basically, 2 friends together, if they fight together, they get stronger together. They've got...
Just like me and you, Shaney. Anyway, keep going.
Anyway, I keep going. There's also instead of MP, they've got the stamina mechanic.
Yes.
So basically...
So this is interesting. I mean, this is very much unique to their kind of thing, the way they handle it.
It's a little bit interesting. It's probably been used somewhere else previously before, but it's still kind of not common, let's just say. So it's a very much interesting mechanic. Basically, each move has its own stamina cost, which then you only regain 1 stamina per turn. So you've got to toss up between, okay, how much stamina
do I go for the killing blow?
Or do I heal, or do I, even throw a status element onto the enemy just so I can win in the long run or something like that.
Or run the RNG gauntlet and hope that they miss their attack or something. Because so I mean, it's got those kind of elements. I guess the main thing though, especially for JRPGs, is they're a delivery method for a story. And I guess, how is the world of Earthlock as a result?
It's an interesting story because you just basically are thrown in straight away. There is no real... there's that 3-minute opening where it's telling this pre-big story of the world itself.
The preamble,
Because it is very much of a new world. It's nothing that's been explored before. You think Final Fantasies, you always think crystals, blah, blah, blah. This is not something like that. It
has no tropes to rely on.
Yeah, it has no tropes or backstory to rely on. So it's creating everything itself. That said, it does it pretty well. There's a few elements that's just kind of missed here and there.
Sometimes it can be close, especially from a new studio,
Yeah, but you get this real sense of deep darkness that some elements here, like, you know, the Empire feels maybe not as good as they should be, something like that. Who would have thunk an Empire?
Empire did nothing wrong,
No, but then there's also a few other, I guess, mechanics even that they bring in through the game and the characters that make it a little bit more interesting.
So I guess being on the Switch makes it a big deal, makes it accessible to a lot of people. Is it still, do you reckon it's still worth a look?
I think definitely worth a look if you're getting it not too expensively. Like, it's maybe not a full price title.
Which I don't think it is.
Which I don't think it is anyway, but it's still actually a fairly long game and a lot of like nice mechanics in it. Like the characters have their own even like character traits outside of combat that you can actually use on the overworld map to either like fight extra enemies, which actually gives you more XP bonuses because you're fighting more XP bonus enemies. But then there's also like your one character can only gather items on the overworld, like, or this character only can do this on the overworld. Sometimes actually that's a little bit annoying because then you have to quick switch characters a lot. But it's still a nice mechanic.
So it still works. So definitely worth a look, even though it's not a JRPG, it's an ERPG.
It's an RPG.
But it's not a WRPG.
It's an RPG. Just say it's an RPG. We're not having that conversation right now, okay?
But it's not a JRPG.
It's an RPG.
It's WRPG.
Now, I had the pleasure of playing a game I'd never heard of before today.
So, you hadn't heard of it?
No,
I remember we got sent the code and I said, who am I going to get to do? I bet you Megs hasn't played it. The game, of course.
Framed Collection on the Switch. I loved it, and I'd never played it before, never heard of it, and I jumped straight in with no expectations, and it blew my mind.
But I think that's why it works. Based on what the game is, it's very, it's fair to say it's a very unique style of game.
Absolutely. It is a puzzle game where you play as an I guess a
spy, or
absolutely a spy,
secret agent.
It's like a silhouette, and it's a comic book style where
quite literally a silhouette. Yeah,
you change the panels of a comic book to essentially rearrange the timeline to have the desired outcome of each panel, basically.
Yeah, but so basically, let's say for example, he's picking up a briefcase and then he's running, he's trying to escape with the briefcase. You have to set the panels up so that he runs around this corner and then he turns right and then he goes across the roof. But if you do it the wrong way around, he falls off the roof and dies.
Yes, that's a very convoluted way of describing it.
Convoluted?
As in, there's a desired outcome for each panel, which has a different environment, a different scene, different outcome, where your spy is either going to get arrested or dies. And imagine this like noir theme, like a really cool jazz soundtrack where it's like really like, you know, you're going to swig a cigar or swig a cigar.
That too, but like,
one of the two.
But
it's really stylish.
It's a very aesthetically driven game, and
yeah,
this is where they've spent a lot of time working on that on top of the mechanics. Obviously, the mechanics are reasonably simple, but the actual, I guess, the art style and not even just the art style, the general aesthetic, is fantastic.
So it's designed by Love Shack Entertainment, who are an Aussie indie developer. It's super exciting, and it's a really polished game. It was first released in 2014 on iOS and Android.
And you can tell. Like, let's be real. You look at it, the way the panels work, it just looks like a comic book, which works perfectly for a screen. It's
perfect. It's so good for handheld that I think the Frame Collection really adds a lot of value, because not only can you now fast forward the gameplay and really speed up those scenes that you've played a few times and you've sucked out, and you know, where the outcome's been right under your nose the whole time.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a really great feeling. That aha moment is really satisfying. So I think, to me, like, being not part of Love Shack Studios, but imagine storyboarding that game. I can't even believe like how much work would have gone behind the scenes to create this beautiful masterpiece.
And that is probably the big takeaway from it, is there's a lot of love there. You can tell that there's a lot of passion behind it, because it is not the kind of game you would think to do if you're wondering about commercial success. There's no whaling. There's no real way to incentivize it outside of play our pretty game and hopefully you like it. And they've done a really good job of that, because even Kojima said it was one of his favorite games of all time. That's a pretty high
They're riding
praise.
that wave still even today with this new release of the collection. But essentially, it came out in a time where it's a really heavy narrative-led game where, as you play, you change the outcome of the game. Now, it's not like a choose your own adventure, but essentially the way you change the panels really changes how your spy survives. And it's really great.
And I think it works better because it is on that micro level rather than the macro level. Because, I mean, all those contrived choices you make in Telltale games, and let's call it Telltale games, they really can only follow certain progressive paths. With this, because it's such a I don't want to say a simple narrative, but it is. Like, you know, you are escaping, or you are saving the girl, or you are doing this. Like,
I loved it.
But because of that, I think it worked. The purity of vision stuck through, and that's what we want out of indie games, purity of vision, I think.
That's right. So there's 1 and 2, framed 1 and 2, and I guess the first one is a work of art where it gets more complicated as you keep playing. So you change the rotation of the panels, you change the orientation, you have to move the panels again once you've already pressed play. It becomes like really challenging and super satisfying, whereas number 2 really perfects that and explores it even further on a more in-depth level, and the environment's a bit more like interactive.
So I guess coming from someone who hadn't played it before, you picked it up for the first time, yes or no? What's the go?
Must have, definitely check it out. It's super affordable on the Nintendo eShop as well as PC on Steam.
That's because of the Switch.
Enjoy.
Hey, Prince here, and I'm joined by Adrian today.
Hey, Adrian here.
How you going, man?
Yeah, going good. How are you?
I've been playing some Banner Saga.
We've been playing some Banner Saga. I've been playing Banner Saga 2.
You got 2, and I got 1, and we've both been playing on Switch.
So you know what's going on. I don't, because I've just jumped in cold to the second one.
You say that, but I guess we'll get into that. The Banner Saga 1 came out in it came out quite a while ago, and then Banner Saga 2 came out in 2016 or something, and now Banner Saga 3 is around the corner.
It is. The first 2 games were released on Switch, and they brought with them a whole new a whole new suite of controls for the Switch, which is really cool.
Yeah. So I guess we should probably jump into the Switch specific stuff first.
Yeah.
This is the first time that you kind of have the best of both worlds, though.
I think so. Like, you can tell it's a PC game. You can tell it's a game that requires or is built for like a pointing device.
Yeah.
And this game satisfies both of those things because you can have the responsiveness of a button press, but also use your finger as you would like a mouse clicker.
I guess the general premise is that you are a mix of like human race and sort of bigger humanoid race. I can't remember the name of them.
It's like Viking inspired.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't recall the name either, but yeah, Viking inspired. You've got these massive characters which are dwindling in number.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're kind of like your brutes, like your big kind of
massive. Yeah.
They're your valuable units, and we should preface that it's a strategy game.
See, it's a strategy game, but it also takes a lot of liberties with the way that it does storytelling. So it's made by a bunch of devs at Stoic Games who had previously worked at BioWare, actually. So they
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
cool.
they had come from developing a lot of very narrative-driven games.
Yeah.
And you can definitely, now you know that.
That
you
is
can kind
on
of
show
figure
here.
out. Yeah.
Because there are so many hard narrative choices to make. Like, this game is so depressing. I jumped in, and within the next half an hour, the first half an hour of playing, I was already really down in the dumps.
Yeah.
Over the choices that I was making, because
it's just so bleak.
It's such a bleak journey, and so much of the game is spent traveling across these barren lands that are war-torn, at least in my version of the game. You're faced with these tough choices around every corner that result in your caravan. You're essentially looking after this gigantic caravan. I assume you were doing that in the first one.
Yeah, that's right. So the characters that you have between 1 and 2, I imagine, can you recall any of the names of the characters at this stage?
Rook. So the 2 main characters, you've got Rook and you've got Alette.
Yes.
So in the second one, you can choose between 2 characters. Can you choose between 2 in the first?
So you end up following 2 different sort of storylines.
The point of view shift.
Yeah. But then at a certain point, after a few battles or a few stretches of narrative, you end up getting thrown to Alette and Rook's storyline, and I'm still currently in that stretch. The storyline, the way that it does narrative, is really, really fascinating, like you said, because obviously coming from BioWare, they give you choices in how you want to proceed as characters in these, quite frankly, screwed situations, and you have to figure out, well, how do I try and make the best of it?
You constantly feel bad for the choices you make. I don't know if you got that impression, but
you can't win. It gets really, really graphic in the way, I mean, not visually graphic, but it really paints the picture in your head through the text narrative, because for the most part, you're not hearing a lot of voiceover. A lot of it is text-based narrative.
But the visual style is really unique and really beautiful, and, you know, speaking to use the word paint there. It is actually like a motion painting.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like they've taken a massive historical painting of a war, like a landscape where war's taken place, and they've just made that into a motion, animated game?
We haven't talked about the gameplay at all. So it is a strategy game. It is on a grid, kind of like Fire Emblem, I guess.
Yeah, or South Park, the recent South Park games.
Oh yeah, true. That was on like a hex kind of situation.
Yeah, like this is more of a large scale, so Fire Emblems are more apt, like Final Fantasy Tactics style. Yeah. So if you're a fan of those styles of games, you'll feel kind of at home here.
I will say though, like the mechanics that you have, or all of the stat keeping that you need to have in mind, I feel like a lot of that has been reduced to just like a handful of numbers that are at your disposal at all times. And so it's a lot easier to sort of glance at the battlefield at any given time and be like, okay, this is how I might be able to try and dodge out of this situation, because it is turn-based. It's not like all of your units take your turn and then all of the enemy units take their turn. It is a back and forward through pretty much the entire time.
There is so much to keep track of, to the point that it gets a little bit too much, and you know, we should speak to difficulty because,
well, like I said, you can see at a glance where you're at on the battlefield, and that means you can either be like, okay, cool, I should be all good if I do this, or I'm
I feel like it's one or the other. There's no like middle ground for me in this game. Like it's either I'm totally up or I'm like maybe okay. This is gonna be alright.
Well, the difficulty you mentioned, I immediately jump to easy because I know that I'm not usually that good at like really tightly mechanic and stat driven like RPGs like this.
Strategies are also my weak point, yeah. And so I'm sticking it through on normal, but it's rough. It's rough. I'm asking myself why.
Again, I feel like what I really enjoy about the Banner Saga is the setting and the world. Like the individual characters, I remember Alette and Rook because it's the characters that you're constantly coming back to all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you're basically playing as them primarily, but all of the other characters, they're fascinating, and the dialogue is always like really, really witty, and I love the writing. But I don't really care that much about the characters. It's the world, it's the visuals, and the soundtrack. Who I can't remember the composer, but it's this beautiful sort of like orchestral soundtrack, guiding you through this fascinating world. And when you're being thrown back and forth between different timelines or different paths
or perspectives,
that's really really fun.
It feels like you're actually playing a movie sometimes.
Yeah,
and that's really cool.
Now, we live in an interesting world when it comes to video games. Like, we have hit that point where people are spinning off from the big studios after they've earned their stripes and done their time, and then making these passion projects that either do really, really well or offer something different from the mainstream. And that's why we have a game like Yonder, made by a bunch of people who've worked for various different studios over time, including Chrome. And you'll find that the interesting part of Yonder is that being an old person and knowing what the Tasmanian Tiger is, I can see so much of the inspiration from the worlds and the open space of Yonder is coming from that game. But basically, the core concept is you play the young fella walking around the world and interacting with all these different things. The one thing the game has going for it is it does look fantastic. Like, I love the art style. I love how whimsical and lighthearted it is. And that was always the Tasmanian Tiger's advantage, was just how great the environments and all of the things that you're interacting with suck you into the world. And that is 100% the strength of this game. The hardest part is you have a game that's basically kind of going for that RPG platformer vibe, but there's no combat. Like, there's no combat. And this is probably what separates it from a lot of these other games is, you know, there's no upgrading swords, there's no even holding a sword. There's none of that. It's either collect quests or there's different objectives that you're given over time by different people and all these different whimsical characters that give you these different jobs. And again, for someone below my age demographic, I'm sure this is great. I'm sure if you were looking for a game for your kids that's reasonably priced, that's great and fanciful and open world and allows them to just explore these great territories and complete these objectives and feel good about themselves, Yonder is that game. If you're looking for kind of a Zelda substitute or something that's going to have those kind of hardcore RPG mechanics attached to such a beautiful world. Like, the first thing a lot of people said when it came out was how similar it looked to Wind Waker, and I don't necessarily agree with that assessment, but I can see why people would say it. It doesn't have any of that kind of gameplay. It just doesn't have any of that kind of drive to it. And that's both its strength and its weakness. If you are looking for those kind of games, Yonder is perhaps not going to scratch that particular itch. It doesn't have any of that driving force as far as beat 10 skeletons or beat this boss. It basically builds itself around exploring these worlds. And as a result, it's great for young kids. Like, it really is aiming at that demographic. It's aiming at people who want to just play these games, explore these wonderful worlds, you know, while they still have their imagination, they haven't had it spoilt for them like the rest of us. This is exactly the kind of game that they should be experiencing. However, if you are looking for a Zelda rip-off or something similar to that, it's not the game for you. If you have young kids or you want to just experience this wonderful, fantastical, whimsical world, Yonder might be worth a look. So that was Yonder, a wonderful, whimsical, fantastical game. And it is interesting to see that it obviously started its console life on the PS4 and the PC and all that, and made its way to Switch.
I'm all about it. I love seeing games come to Switch now. I think it's a great way of embracing a new way to play.
Yeah.
I've got a few hopes and dreams for things to come to Switch eventually. Animal Crossing.
Well, look, we're all hoping for Animal Crossing, let's be real. The Capitalism Simulator 101. But I mean, look, there's a lot of games doing it now. They're coming, they've got these either Steam histories or whatever. Banner Saga, for example, number 3, I think, comes out on PC real soon, so they're releasing it on the Switch to kind of catch back up. There's so many great games that just could make a home there. I'm still very sad that Luigi's Mansion is a 3DS game.
One day, let's hope. But I also kind of want Cuphead to be on Switch.
It's not gonna happen.
I know, it's super sad.
You're such an Xbox, Jesus Christ. Yeah. It would, I mean, it fits perfectly. 2 players straight away, pull it out.
Yeah. What about games like Assassin's Creed, now that there's 20,000 titles in the franchise?
I mean,
a new way to play that type of game people are kind of sick of, don't really need more of. It could be great.
It could. I think that's going to be, you'll find that a lot of that is going to happen soon, but they're going to release, for example, Bethesda have been really good about releasing Doom and Wolfenstein and all these games with this impressive back-end architecture to do it. But I still think a Fallout 3 or a New Vegas.
Oh, how about Fallout Shelter coming to Switch? That's great.
That's something, yeah. I like mobile games. Yeah, the finger thing means the taxes.
I think it's free.
Yeah, but free.
Yeah.
Free to start. That's the old Nintendo life.
Yeah.
But obviously, the future's looking bright for those guys. We've got Mario Tennis Aces about the time that you're watching this. It's a big smash.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of great stuff for them, and it's been interesting to see them actually capitalise on momentum for once.
It's really exciting to see such a regular release cycle to really support the life cycle of the Switch console. I think it's got a long way to go, and it has weight under its belt to really carry it through.
Plus, I've got a little bit of a curated content area now, which is nice, because then actually look at stuff and go, oh, maybe that's worth a look. Yeah. But that is the end of another episode. Thank you for joining me, Megan. You can, of course, check us out on www.newgameplus.tv and then Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube,
the whole
Twitch,
thing. Jump on.
All of them. New Game Plus TV. We will be there. We'll be streaming. We'll be playing stuff. It's going to be great fun. We've got some great announcements coming up. Can't quite tell you yet, but there's some really cool stuff we're doing very soon. Megan, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, as usual.
We'll see you guys next time.